Today we'll be painting a chocolate chip cookie falling into a glass of milk. Now, before we really get started with painting it all in, let's just make first a light wash to get rid of that white. So I'm just mixing some ultramarine blue with Payne's Gray. Other than that, on the palette I have King's Blue, burnt umber, yellow ochre and titanium white. I'll be adding more colors to that later on. Now I'm using water for this because I'm painting with water soluble oil paint. But if you can also use turpentines for this, of course. This is just to get that white off. Just a nice neutral gray. And I will rub this, the most of it off again after I put this initial layer on there. This is a very smooth panel from the brand Mus, M-U-S. It's a Dutch brand. Often I also prime it with some acrylic gesso and prepare some staining in bulk. But for this one I wanted to do a different approach and paint on the smooth surface. No. Just wipe that out a bit. And then what I'm going to do is just put some indications on there that we know where to put which lines compared to our reference. So I'm putting these at intervals of 5 centimeters. I have a similar grid on my reference, which is on the iPad next to me. I'm not drawing grid lines, but just merely dots. Because if I would draw the entire lines, it might get muddy when you paint over it. And we only need it really in the initial stages, just to get the rough sizes and shapes on there. There we go. I'm taking a small flat brush. I'm just dipping it slightly into some water. Again, I'm using water mixable oil paints, so I can do so that I don't need any terps. Now let's first get a rough start with that cookie. Just getting in those rough first shapes, the outlines. And I'm always comparing it. It's too much water there. I'm always comparing it roughly to the points where the lines meet my imaginary, or not imaginary, where the lines meet the lines on the reference, the lines of the grid. Sorry, sometimes painting and talking can be quite challenging. Really love this reference. It was made for us for the food paint challenge by a guest host. And I highly recommend you to check it out and maybe even participate yourself if you'd like to. And for the glass, maybe I will use a bit of this mixture. this cookie has a dark side here and a light side there. Same goes for the milk. So the light is coming basically from this angle, from this direction. And we have also a bit of shadow play in there even. On the background, let's just add a little bit of shadow already there. Like that. Now I will be starting to mix some base colors. Now for the cookie, I think we really need to use yellow ochre and this burnt umber to get a nice cookie color already. And we can lighten that also with white, just comparing it to the reference. This is a quite nice mid-tone already. For the shadow, I would make it a bit darker. See what that does. Oh yeah, perfect. For the light part, more yellow ochre and a touch of white. That will do. So actually, as you can see, the colors on that cookie are quite straightforward, right? Just 3 colors and we already have a nice part to begin with. Now the milk might be more difficult, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now on the glass you also see this area. It's quite dark and you see the background show through. So that means in the beginning we already need to know what do we want to do with that background. Now I think the color of the reference is pretty cool with this, so I will aim a bit for that same color scheme. But before I really dive into the background, I think we should already get some of the milk in there. That's a quite dominant thing. I will start with the cookie, then move my way to the milk, I think, and gradually we will work on the background as well. Let's start first with some shadows here on the cookie. Here's also a nice shadow because we want to show those cracks on there, right on that cookie. The chocolate chips, that's something I'll do later on. I'm not going to focus on those just yet. This is just blocking in some colors. Let's see if we can keep this painting also rather playful. And when I say playful, I mean not too tight. And then you can see a nice variety of brush strokes on there. That gives it life, right? At least I feel so. Doesn't look much like a cookie just yet, but it will all come later on. Again, for now, it's just blocking in some colors and shapes in there. I'm constantly wiping off my brush. I'm not using any water or turpentines to clean it. No. Here I have a tiny bit of ochre and white. Actually might be nice already to get some color of that milk in there. And I'm doing this very thinly. You can even see parts of the background still shine through. What I also notice is that the milk on this side of the glass is a bit more greenish. So let's see if we can make a bit of a milky mixture with a bit of a green tone to it. And for that I'm using the ultramarine blue and yellow ochre. Need more ultramarine. Maybe still a little bit more. See where that gets us. Actually, that flushes out like that. And I think we really need to do something about that background, but I'm not sure how I want to approach that yet. Not sure yet. No, painting is often a whole complex puzzle, and you don't always have the pieces ready at hand in the mere beginning. It's a search. Taking some of this King's blue perhaps also for the lighter side, where I also see a bit of blue in that milk. Just indications of the shape of that glass. And I want to keep it loose, fresh. See if we can do that. And I love working on these small panels because they give you the option to paint without too many obligations to it. It doesn't matter if you are not too happy with the result, but you learn from it by doing it. By just picking up that brush and painting and just experimenting, trying out new things. If you paint with a very big canvas or panel, it's immediately very daunting, and you will feel sometimes that it's a waste of the resources if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to. And it's okay to make mistakes, you know, you're learning, you're painting, most people paint as a hobby, like myself. Shouldn't be overcomplicating things and worrying. It should be a fun experience instead. Let's take some of this Payne's gray. See what happens when we mix that with this lighter blue. It's a bit too dark still. Add some more blue. Not immediately going for the white to lighten it, but rather the blue. And if it's too blue, then we can add white. So now I'm looking for the bottom of the glass. And yes, later on I will definitely add more white to my palette. But I think this is a nice color for the glass, for the bottom of it. I always like working on a panel because you can really rub out your paint. Now we need to be a bit darker, so I'm adding some more of that gray. Maybe a touch of ochre as well, just to neutralize it a bit more. And I'm only looking at the bigger shapes of it all, how they interact, what the light does. Again, trying not to overcomplicate things for myself. Then I also realized that this part here needs to be a bit higher up. And let's also think about our soft edge here, because we don't want focus on there. So we keep it a bit vague. We want our attention to go to this area, right? What I already like here is that you see a nice mix between cool and dark colors. I think that's an interesting mix. So I'm happy with that. Adding some white here for the side of the glass. Moving up here. Pitch of the gray again. I'm still using the same brush as when I started. But I think soon it will be time to move on to a smaller one. Get some kind of reflections going on here in the glass, trying to recreate them as well. This is definitely an area later on I need to revisit with a smaller brush. Let's see if we can do some of that milky violence over there as well. Taking some of this white again, putting it on a pile here, just to get it slightly off-white, you know, because you cannot go whiter than titanium white. So I want to keep that for the very last part, for the real accents and highlights I might want to add. Until that time, I'm very withholding putting bright whites on my painting. Now let's see, we have this nice splash here. And then it goes like that. And behind the cookie is also a splash. That looks like a part of the cookie broke off. Well, let's just see what we'll do with that later on. And these splashes, they're quite rounded. Huh? There's no sharp edge in there. It's an organic shape you see. Here we go a bit cooler as well. Rubbing away a bit of that cookie. this to be a bit more of an upward motion, so because it splashes and like bounces back up. Something like that is happening there. First I'll put some more of that white on my panel. And I'm going to work already a bit on that background. So I'm taking some of these blues, mixing them, also adding white, kind of mixing all these blues here together for a bit of a neutral background color. Maybe some of this ultramarine blue as well. And we just do this a bit on the fly, a bit on the feeling. Still think it's too dominant like that, so we want to add more white. We should do rather nicely. And later on I might add some darker parts as well. Let's see what this does. Yeah. Sculpt some of the figure in there. Just following these shapes here. Sculpting away some milk. Kind of like how these colors work together, I must say. Just wondering if I need to make it a bit more darker in the background and lighter in the foreground. That might be a nice touch as well. Making these edges meet a bit. Just setting some playful notes around there. To add some dynamics to it. To make it even more explosive, right? Sculpting around this little droplet here. Mixing some more of a lighter value for the foreground here. Some lighter values. Following the shape of the glass a bit. And then maybe a bit of a darker tone as well. Keeping it playful. Making some variations. On the fly. See if later on we want to do something more with that. Or not. Now I am moving to a smaller brush. And I'll continue working on that cookie, because that's our focus point. And then the milk. Let's see. Also need some more lighter values for that cookie, I feel. With this you can just lay it on nice and thick. I'm going over this quite randomly, to be honest. I'm not fitting every little mark I see. Instead I keep it a bit more suggestive. Too bright there, so I'm just blending it in. Brightest part will have to be still the milk, of course. And here and there a touch on the cookie itself. This transition from dark to light is rather smooth, so let's try to keep it that way. Let it disappear a bit behind the milk. And for those chunks of chocolate, I'm using just straight burnt umber. And for the lighter parts, a bit of that shadow mixture. I do believe that gives a quite accurate representation of a chocolate chip cookie. Maybe just a touch of burnt sienna as well, just for those warm notes. Burnt sienna is more of a reddish brown, and burnt umber is more of a yellow brown. A banana, for example, the darkest part there would be nice with burnt umber. Just adding some touches here and there. make it nice and ragged around that edge. And there are some random crumbly shapes. Again, don't be a slave of your reference. Just paint what you want to paint and what you feel you need to paint. Now I do see for the background here, didn't really put anything in there yet. So let's do that now as well. Mix a little bit more for the background. Bit of a harder chunk here. Let's take it out. Now, before going back to my background, I'm going to do something more with that milk. Let's just take some white. And make that milk flow. Without having too strong edges again. I think that's the key learning point here is to make milk look like a liquid. Already starting to look a bit like milk. And then here on the cookie is also like a droplet. And the cookie here is still a little bit wet of the milk. So we're just blending some milk into there. And then here's a bit of milk. It's too strong. I'm blending it in a bit. And there's it, one little droplet there. Cool. Now that glass. Let's see what we can do about that glass work. Like a little bit of new pile of paint here. And I'm still using my small brush. Also here. It's very subtle. It does tell you that it's behind the glass, then. Behind some curving glass, I mean. There it needs to be dark. See if we can also put some shadow of that cup, of that glass. You also have like these shapes going on a bit. So let's see if we can make a nice, like, just mushing it all together here to see if we can get a bit of a milky shadow color. I think it needs to be a bit more dark, so just taking some of these other mixtures into account. So you get a bit of a grayish, darker value. Let's see what that does. reflections in the glass. And around this edge it's a bit darker again. And then on this side it's lighter again. And then here, where it goes over the edge, it's darker again. So maybe we can use this liverish mixture there. Just to get some indications of that shape. That's pretty nice. Down there it's a bit darker. So I'm just putting a bit of paint on the brush and kind of moving my way up there. See if we can make these arches a bit more prominent. Just darkening the milk here also a bit. We can add a little stripe here in the background to show like, hey, the glass is continuing here. Making another little droplet here. One can be more vague than the other. That all doesn't matter. I do like that there's also this little droplet there in front. put too much focus on that one drop. I just want it to be there that when you see it, you say, oh, that's a funny little detail. Okay, let's see if we can do a bit more about the background. And for that, actually, I'm gonna get a bit more softer brush to lay down some darker colors. See where we can blend when we want to. I do think too dark. Let's add some more of that king blue. Just all of it. Yeah, sure. Why not? Just blending a bit also on the field itself, on the panel. Just want this background to be a bit more further back, you know? Basically what I'm doing now is just softening the shapes a bit on that background. The milk can be darker. Making a greenish, gray, whatever, to gently go over it with that same brush as I use for the background. And back to my smaller brush to add some shadow here. See some yellowish also in the background here. Making this a bit less prominent. This stripe also. Just adding some highlights here and there. Not that I necessarily see them, just for the fun of it. This one's a bit too much. Sharpen it out. And this corner is too sharp. Creating some organic, playful shapes there. To give that impression that it's flowing, guys. There we go. This might also be a nice location for a highlight. No, that wasn't beautifully executed, but let's see if we can fix that. Yeah. I like these dark tones to also be down here a bit more. There we go. Just see, for some reason there's some dry blotches of paint here and there in the background color. So those I'm just taking out and then the holes they left behind. I'll fix again with this one, just smoothing it out. No big deal. And then ultimately, it's time to sign it. Thanks for watching.